Begin the new Masechta, Masechtas Beyo, or as some call Masechtas Yomtiv. Begin Daf Beis, begin the first parak Beyo Shel Noldo. Shiz corresponds because of Machesket to Entam Darachaim, to joining us for today's Daf. Something to discuss in today's Daf are, again, the beginning of this Masechta, which discusses the laws of Yomtiv, the laws of Muktzah, the laws of Eruv Tavshilin, the ability to cook from Yomtiv to Shabbos. The basic concept of the Masechta started in today's Daf, including the laws of Muktzah, Noilid, and Hachana about preparation. We have in today's Daf Machlekes Beisham Besil regarding the title of the Masechta, of the Mishnah, of an egg laid on Yom Tov, and 4 different ways to explain this Machlekes. Just we have 2 more Machlekes between Beisham Besil and our Mishnah regarding this shiur of shiur, to be chayav on Pesach, which is chametz, regarding the law of kis hadam on Yom Tov, regarding covering the blood of an animal. So the key terms of concept discussed in today's Daf are muktzah. Muktzah is something that was set aside, meaning out of sight, out of mind. You didn't have intention to use it, therefore it's something that's forbidden to be used on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Which we learn from the pasuk, it can be on the 6th day on Friday, they can prepare what they're going to bring, which therefore that means to say it has to be prepared and not set aside, which, well, the machlekes and shas between Rav Shimon and Yehuda, which comes into today's daf, regarding if you hold a muktzah or if you don't hold a muktzah. Everyone agrees there's some form of a muktzah, but in general, do we consider that you have to have things prepared or not? That is a machlekes between Rav Shimon and Yehuda. Noilid is the type of muktzah, or somewhere in that category of something that was not in existence before Shabbos. Again, so obviously wasn't prepared, but it's more severe. That's actually a discussion on our daf. Does even those who don't hold the muktzah hold of noilid, where it was an egg that wasn't here before, or rain that wasn't here, was in the clouds, all these things, or a vessel that was not broken, that is a machlekes if it's considered as muktzah. Now, kis hadam is the mitzvah by a bird and a wild animal to cover their blood. Is that it's much more of a kunz to go ahead and paskin lahetu than it is l'chomer, because l'chomer you could always be machmer and tinish, but koich l'teira is better. So we begin the current daf Beis and Alf, discussing the laws of Yom Tov. Says the Mishnah, Beis should all be Yom Tov, regarding an egg that was laid on Yom Tov. So we have machlekes. Bisham says you could eat that egg. So Still says you cannot eat that egg that day on Yom Tov. The Gemara is going to explain the reason why would you not be able to eat this egg that was laid on Yom Tov. Now another machlekes, and it's because these 3 halachas are from the leniencies of Beis Shammai, which generally Beis Shammai is machmir, Basil is mekel. These are from the leniencies of Beis Shammai, of the stringencies of Hill by Yom Tov. So therefore they're brought together. These 3 halachas, although they're not really related specifically, but they're regarding Yom Tov and they're from the leniencies of Beis Shammai. And the Gemara is going to explain the reasoning for all these halachas. Beis Shammai, they say that shiur is the leavening itself, which is a more severe type of, it ferments the dough itself. So that's more stringent, that's bekizayis, that's even if it's the size of an olive. The chametz, but the bread, let's say, the thing that was leavened, is bekakeseves, is like that of a date, which is a larger measurement. It's not as severe as that of shiur, which is a smaller amount. It's more of a chumrah. Beisila, they disagree, and again, they're more chamer, like we're saying, although generally Beisila is more mekel. Here they're more mekel. They say, no, zeb because even chametz is not allowed to be up until a date. No, it's even if it's the size of an olive, it's going to be an isser of chametz. Third machlekes is, hasheichet chayav ba'oif b'yom tov. Someone slaughters a wild animal or a bird on Yom Tov. So they have a halacha of kis hadam, you have to cover the blood, you got to take some earth and cover it. So B'Shammai, in the school of Shammai, they say, okay, yachber b'deker, dig with a spade, v'yichasa, and go ahead and cover the blood. B'Silam, they say, no, lo yishchit. You're not allowed to slaughter the animal on Yom Tov, elam kin ho'ila ofa muchem b'bayim, unless you have earth prepared from before Yom Tov. But to go ahead and start digging and to cover the blood now, no, that you can't do. But they still agree, if you did slaughter, that now you have the blood, what do you do? That you should dig with the spade and cover it. As the Gemara is going to actually explain, it's told about where the spade is already stuck into the ground from before Yom Tov. As he explains, because the ashes of an oven is considered prepared. The Gemara is going to explain exactly what is he saying. What does ashes from an oven prepared have to do with what you're telling me that if you have a spade stuck into the ground, that then you can go ahead, if you b'di'evid went and slaughtered the animal, that you could cover the blood. The Gemara is going to explain exactly how do you read that sentence. But now the Gemara goes back to the opening halacha of our Mishnah. The title of the parak of the Mesechta of Beitzah Shenolda B'Yom Tov. We had a machlekes regarding eating that egg. Beis Shammai says you could eat the egg. Beis Hillel says you cannot eat the egg. So it says the Gemara B'Vaiskin, what is the case that we're talking about? What is the chicken that laid the egg? As the Gemara explains. If it's talking about a chicken that is standing to be eaten, which means to say you could slaughter a chicken on Yom Tov, you could eat, and so therefore it's not muktzah. So my tamai the Beis Hillel. So what's the reason Beis Hillel that they say that the egg is going to be asur, it's going to be forbidden to be eaten? Why? Uchla de ifrasu. What that means to say, it's like like slicing a piece of bread from a loaf of bread, where the egg is basically the chicken wasn't muktzah. And if you wanted, like Tais says, you could slaughter it and you could eat whatever's inside of the chicken. So the egg was like a piece of edible food. The chicken is not muktzah. It was designated for eating. So why would the egg that's coming out of the chicken be asur? It's slicing something off a piece of bread. So Ella rather says the Gemara, no, you're right. Oh, we're talking about a type of chicken that is muktzah on Yom Tov because it's set aside for raising eggs, for not for to eat the chicken. You want the chicken to stay whole. You weren't going to go ahead. You had no mind of shechting it on. This is where you raise you sell your eggs in the marketplace. So then the question is, okay, now the question is the other way. So then my time with the Beis Shammai, what's the reason Beis Shammai that they let you eat the egg? Muktzah. It's muktzah. This chicken is set aside. You had no intention of eating that chicken on Yom Tov, so it's muktzah. And then the egg is a derivative of that. So why would you be allowed to eat the egg on Yom Tov? Which the Gemara says, wait a second, my question, what type of question is that? Maybe Beis Shammai does not hold of the laws of muktzah, meaning, as Rashi explains, maybe he holds like Rabbi Shimon, who is quoted many times, one of them in Parakir and Shabbos and Dalam and Aleph, that he says that the leftover oil in the lamp and in the bowl, the Tanakh Rabbi Yehuda says it's aser. Shimon says it's mutter because although it was set, it wasn't designated. It was set aside for something that you couldn't use it because it was lit, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. The second that you could use it, you could use it. There's no halacha of muktzah. So maybe Beis Shammai holds like Rabbi Shimon. And although Taisa points out that we find clearly placed that Beis Shammai holds of muktzah, but Taisa differentiates that there's different types of muktzahs, and therefore could be that in this case that Beis Shammai would not hold of the laws of muktzah. That says the Gemara, no. The reason why we're asking this question, what's the reason Beis Shammai, is because we made a presumption. What was the presumption that we made? That a filaman, even according to Reb Shimon, the shiur b'muktzah that he says that muktzah is permitted. There's no problem about something that wasn't prepared. It was set aside. You weren't going to use it in Yom Tov. Still, Reb Shimon says when you change your mind, you want to use it, you could use it. But b'noilet asa, by something that was only created on Yom Tov, that would be forbidden. Why? What would be the smart and big machalik and differentiating between muktzah and noil? Because by muktzah he holds, a person doesn't set aside something that would be fit for him. So although he didn't really think about using it, because I always used to use this chicken for eggs, but if somehow I have a special guest in Yom Tov and that's the best chicken, so good. So that's not considered muktzah because if I know I'm going to need it, I'm going to end up using it. But noiled, you didn't know about to even think about because it didn't even exist before Yom Tov. So even if you hold generally muktzah is mutter, but you would agree that noiled is asur. That was what the Gemara's presumption was when he was asking this question. Then, okay, then my tamai the Beis Shammai. Then what's the reason of Beis Shammai that he would say that it's going to be permitted if this is noiled, and the Tosfos differentiates also again different types of noiled. But the point is that this is something that's new. It wasn't around at all. It was in the chicken. So therefore, why would it be mutter? So Rav Nachman, he says, I'll tell you the pshat. The Gemara gives 4 interpretations of this machlekes. So the first one is Rav Nachman, and he says, okay, we're talking about a chicken. We weren't sure. We said either way, if the chicken's for eating or if it's for eggs, we had a difficulty what's the understanding of the other opinion. So I'll tell you the cases by a chicken that's designated for raising eggs. Okay, means say it's muktzah. And with the islay muktzah, islay noiled. Whoever holds a muktzah holds a noiled. With the lesle muktzah, lesle noiled. That's essentially the chiddush of Nachman is coming to tell us. He says it's not true. If you don't hold the muktzah, then you don't hold the noiled. And because it doesn't make a difference, there's no halacha of having to be prepared. So Bishama is Rabbi Shimon. Bishama is like Rabbi Shimon that says that that's mutter. There's no halach of muktzah, and hence no halach of noilid. And therefore, although this egg was noilid on Yom Tov, you could go ahead and eat it. We still Rabbi Yehuda. We still also Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rav Nachman's interpretation. The problem is, says the Gemara, Rav Nachman really say this, that Beis Hill is like Rabbi Yehuda that holds up the halacha of muktzah, and that's why Beis Hill is the more machmer sheet over here, and he holds that the egg that's born in Yom Tov, you can't eat it. But what's not? Look at Mishnah Masechta Shabbos, it says like this. The school of Shammai, they say, you can lift up on Shabbos, mi'al hashulchan, from the table, at samais, bones, which are not fit to be eaten, uklipen, so Rashi explains it, uklipen and the shells of nuts, which we're not concerned for muktzah, although these things have no utility, but we're not concerned for the fact that it's muktzah. Ubisila, the school of Hill, they say no, you're not allowed to move it with your hands because it's muktzah, has no Shabbos utility. Rather, misalik as a tavla kula, what you do is you remove the whole entire table that has a halachic status of a vessel on it, umenara, and you shake it off. That's the way you can do it. Now, although Tais discusses what's the it's a basis, it's a base for a davar asa. How could you move the table? Tais has a few interpretations. Either that it's not. One of the more obvious ones is that it's a basis of davar asa or davar mutter. I mean, it's not only on the table, only the shells. You also have the food items themselves, and therefore it wouldn't be a problem about a basis. So again, you can't pick up the shells themselves because they have muktzah, but you could lift up the table itself. That's the way it's quoted in Masechta Shabbos. Now, Rav Nachman said, no, Anlo Ein Lanu. He says, we don't have an explanation of this initially, because it's actually, you have to switch around the opinions. Ella, rather, the way I heard it from my teachers was the reverse. Beishamai Rabbi Yehuda. Beishamai is like Rabbi Yehuda, and they're more machmer, and they hold that you can only move the table. Basil is like Rabbi Shimon, and they hold that muktzah is not a problem, and hence, you could move the shells, and you could move the bones. So how could Reb Nachman say in our interpretation of our Mishnah that the reason why Beis Hill hold that you cannot eat the egg that was laid on Yom Tov? Because Beis Hill is like Rabbi Yehuda who holds of muktzah and hence holds of noilid. Beis Shammai holds you could eat the egg because they're like Rabbi Shimon who holds that there's no problem with muktzah and hence there's no problem with noilid. But Reb Nachman himself is quoting here in the Machlekes and Masechta Shabbos that Beis Hill is like Rabbi Shimon and Beis Shammai is like Rabbi Yehuda. That Beis Hill does not hold a muktzah, so that contradicts what he says over here. It's a very interesting answer, says the Gemara. Amalach Rav Nachman would tell you there's no contradiction between his two different interpretations of our Mishnah Masechta Beya and that Mishnah Masechta Shabbos. Gabi Shabbos, regarding the laws of Shabbos, there's Sasim on Tani Rabbi Shimon, where we have anonymous Mishnah like Rabbi Shimon in the laws of muktzah. Would we find? It's not like Luna Mishnah and the Kovnan Vavim Abeis. The Mishnah says, Machatchenes at Luim, you could cut the gourds, which are a type of like vegetable, like pumpkins, that are detached from the ground, in front of an animal. Meaning, we don't say that it's an unnecessary exertion that you shouldn't be doing on Shabbos. Additionally, and this is the main point of this halacha, and a dead animal that you could cut it up for the dogs. So, although the animal died on Shabbos, which by twilight on Friday night, this animal was not designated for being eaten by dogs because it was still living. Even so, it's going to be permitted. Why? Because we don't hold a muktzah on Shabbos. So therefore, even though it was set aside, it wasn't going to be designated for the dogs. But once it dies, we don't care that it wasn't set aside. So therefore, when you're about taking off things from the table, which is on Shabbos, mukum la Beis Hill Rabbi Shimon. Reb Nachman said, we're going to say that Beis Hill is like Rabbi Shimon. Why would we say Beis Hill is like Rabbi Shimon? Because we don't want to have a difficulty of a hilchasa on the hilchasa. Meaning, the rule is halacha kistam mishnah. And in the laws of Shabbos, we have a stam mishnah that says like Rabbi Shimon that there's no problem about muktzah. Now, we also know that halacha is like Beis Hill. So we're going to say that over there, Masechta Shabbos, we're going to switch around the opinions like Rav Nachman did to say that Beis Hill is like Rabbi Shimon, that there's no muktzah because we want to be miyashiv the two halachic standings of halachic stam mishnah and halachic Beis Hill. But that's the regular laws of Shabbos. Aval, but as it came to Medbei, Gabi Yom Tov, regarding the laws of Yom Tov, the Sasim on Tani Rabbi Yehuda, we have anonymous mishnah in the laws of Yom Tov like Rabbi Yehuda. Because it's not, we'll learn the mishnah later on, the Laman Alf that says, Eimavak and Eitzim. You're not allowed to chop up wood on Yom Tov, not from Min HaKairis, from the beams that are organized one on the other on the ground, which are waiting to be used for building. But neither from a beam that broke on Yom Tov. Meaning, although now, what are you going to do with a broken beam? You're only going to use it for fuel, but since by twilight it was not designated for that, because it was a regular beam, so what's called Kivin is Ketzor L'Min Hashmasha, since by twilight it was set aside, not for your Yom Tov purposes, so it's Ketzor L'Kul Yom, it's considered Muktzah for the whole day of Yom Tov. Obviously, you see from the anonymous mission in this Masechta, that we do all of the laws of Muktzah on Yom Tov. So therefore, Mukim, that's why Rav Nachman explained our mission over here, which is talking about the laws of Yom Tov, but Be'er Shenol Yom Tov. He explains the Beis Hillel, Rabbi Yehuda. He explains the Beis Hillel like Rabbi Yehuda, who says that when, as we explained the case in the Mishnah, when you have the chicken that's being used to make eggs, not to eat, which it's muktzah, so then the eggs are also going to be muktzah. So that's why we said that, on the one hand, Beis Hillel in the Masechta Shabbos, we said it's like Rabbi Shimon. On the other hand, we said over here by Beis Hillel now Masechta and the Laws of Yom Tov, we said like Rabbi Yehuda. Well, how's that possible? Well, we need to do that because we have a Stam Mishnah in Shabbos that there is muktzah, and we have a Stam Mishnah in Yom Tov like Rabbi Yehuda that there is muktzah. So we want Beis Hillel to be like both of them. So in Shabbos we'll say like Rabbi Shimon, and by Yom Tov we'll say like Rabbi Yehuda. But then says you are mechti. Wait a second, let's see. Man Sasmil Masin. Who is it that authored and created the anonymous Mishnayos throughout Shas? That's Rebbe. It's Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. He organized the Mishnayos. When he saw the opinion of a certain Talmid Chacham and he liked that interpretation, he liked that halacha, he said it anonymously. He didn't say who said it, so that people should say over this opinion, even though it's from one Tana, and it should look like as if the public had said it, and they'll do like that because he's just saying anonymously as if this is what everyone agrees, even though it's really one opinion. But Rebbe did it because he wants it to be the halacha. So the question begs, Maishna b'Shabbos, and what's the difference on Shabbos? That the Sasam on Kirib Shimon. So why on Shabbos is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi saying anonymously, like Rabbi Shimon, that there's no laws of Muktzah? Umashna b'Yom Tov, and what's the difference on Yom Tov? The Sasam Rabbi Yehuda, that he says anonymously, halacha like Rabbi Yehuda, that there is Muktzah on Yom Tov. What would be the difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov? So they said, I'll tell you why. Shabbos, the Chamira, but Shabbos is very severe. Everyone knows Shabbos, and no one's going to be, because you can't do any malacha on Shabbos, and people are not going to be disgraceful to it. So if we're going to do one leniency, like not having the extent of muktzah, we're not going to make a greater leniency. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was lenient, and he said the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon, that's more lenient. But Yom Tov, the kill, but Yom Tov is more lenient. Meaning people do malachas on Yom Tov, that's v'oichel nefesh. So it's a lesser severity. So if we're going to be more lenient, people are going to be disgraceful for the Yom Tov. So Sazam Yehuda Machmer, which is this actually from the few things that Yom Tov is actually more machmer than Shabbos. The laws of Muktzah are actually more chamer on Yom Tov than they are on Shabbos, and that's why Rav Nachman said that Beis Hillel in our Mishnah says Be'er Shenol Yom Tov is aser. Why is it aser? Because it's a chicken that's being used for legadol beitzim, so it's muktzah, and the egg is thus also muktzah, which noilid, whoever holds a muktzah holds a noilid. As like Rabbi Yehuda, Beis Hillel in Masechta Shabbos says like Reb Shimon that there's no muktzah. Shabbos is more mekel than Yom Tov. That's why it's not a contradiction. And then the Gemara continues to ask and says, wait a second, but Maya Kimta, how does Reb Nachman explain this case? He's telling to me, you're saying, okay, it's a chicken that's being used to raise eggs, not to eat the chicken. And the problem with that is therefore the chicken is set aside and thus the egg is set aside. If that's the case, instead of disagreeing regarding the egg, then you should disagree with the chicken itself if you're allowed to eat it as it is. That should say the chicken, why say the egg? The chicken itself is, which one's first, the chicken or the egg? But the chicken itself is muktzah. You're saying the egg comes from the chicken, so don't eat the chicken. Why are you talking about the egg? You're saying whoever holds the muktzah holds the knife, so it's the same thing. So go to the chicken. Why are you going to the egg? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. We want to say the thrust and the strength of Beis Shammai that even the benoilid shari, it's not only stam muktzah. Noilid, like we said, is even more chomer. In a way, we have a havamina that even those who are mata muktzah would hold noilid is going to be aser. So even the egg that's laid, he holds the mutter. It says the Gemara, okay, but lifli b'tan the that's why to say the machlekes regarding the chicken, but the yacha krechem Beis Hillel, to say the thrust of Beis Hillel, that even the muktzah asri, that they say it's aser not only by noilid, but even the chicken that's only muktzah is going to be aser. Why are you picking the egg? And if you're going to tell me, because koich the teru adiv, No, it's better for us to tell you the strength until how much is the permitter going to be relying on his teaching, and he's not afraid to rule leniently. Because those who say things are forbidden, it's not a right, it's not a proof, because everyone can be machmer, even something that's mutter. So therefore, that's why we wanted to tell you the egg where Beisham is going to be makel, even by noilet to say you could eat the egg, but never be tavai. At least then, but disagree by both. Why didn't the Mishnah say if you have a chicken that's being used to raise eggs, he will Beitzah the chicken and the egg is the machlekes, and then you'll tell me the chiddush of both of them. Beisham will say you could eat it. Beisham will say you can't eat it. Then you'll be able to tell me both of them. Why are you telling it just regarding the egg? It sounds like that the machlek is not regarding the chicken, but the way you're saying Rav Nachman, the machlek is not just regarding the egg; it's regarding the chicken too. Shais explains you could really ask this every time we say krechtet here on the way after Shabbos. He says no, because he could say no one in the bridge version. It's very easy to say he ubeitzasa, and it's so simple to say it. Why didn't you say it? Obviously, it sounds like the machlek is not regarding the chicken; it's only regarding the egg, which is therefore a difficulty under Rav Nachman's interpretation. So Elam Rabba, rather Rabba gives a second interpretation. And this machlek is a beish and nolda b'yamtiv. The machlek is in Misham says you could eat or not. It says Rabba lo'elam b'tanagol samedis la'achila. He's saying a different case. The case is not talking about when the chicken is for raising eggs. It's rather you're raising the chicken to eat it. So therefore, generally, obviously the chicken would not be muktzah, and then the egg wouldn't either because ochel de'if is like a piece off chip of the whole block. It's a piece of the bread off the loaf of bread. But we're talking about a specific case. We're talking about when Yom Tov is on Sunday. So what's the problem if the chicken is laid on Sunday, on Yom Tov? Because of preparation, which Basil holds it's forbidden if you weren't prepared from a weekday, which as the Gemara is going to explain, but this is what's known as what's called Hachana de Rabbah. That's the terminology that's used. This is Rabbah's interpretation, because Rabbah holds like this. Any egg that's being born now, it was finished the day before. So although it was finished naturally, what's called b'dei shemayim, it's going to be forbidden because you need to have that all the meals of Shabbos and all the meals of Yom Tov should be ready and prepared from the weekday. And this is not prepared from the weekday, this is prepared from Shabbos before Yom Tov. Because the Rabbah that says it's forbidden with this hachana of Shabbos for the next day of Yom Tov, even if you didn't do it yourself, even though it was what's called b'dei shemayim, he goes according to his reasoning. What's his reasoning? Because Rabbi said in Masechta Pesachim that from Zayin Mabeis, which from here is where he learns that actually that the laws of Muktzah are biblical. It says, "My Siv, what does it mean in pasuk in Shemais? It's going to be on the 6th day, on Friday. They should prepare what they're going to bring. What does that mean? So, for example, a person has to say on Friday, from here I'm going to eat tomorrow. And what does that mean? That you have to orally designate it? How do we know that that's what it's talking about? Because if you would think the pasuk comes to tell you that you should prepare with your hands, to say that you should bake and you should cook from before Shabbos, the pasuk explicitly says that. He says, what you're going to bake, you can bake. Rather must be, they were talking about what you orally are preparing. And that's what it says, B'yom HaShishi, which generally the Friday, the 6th day, is a weekday, and the Torah is requiring you that for the Shabbos meal, that you should have prepared it from before day, meaning when it's still a weekday. So that's what Rabbah says. The pasuk is teaching you Chol Meichem LaShabbos. The weekday can prepare for Shabbos, but Chol Meichem LaYom Tov, and the weekday can prepare for Yom Tov, because Yom Tov is also called Shabbos. And you need to have that the meal should be prepared, and that preparation should be from the weekday. But as Rashi points out, a weekday meal itself is not so significant, and therefore you don't really have the halacha of being prepared for it. And therefore, a regular Sunday, we have no problem about an egg that's born on Sunday, that you can go ahead and eat that egg, even though it was prepared from the day before on Shabbos, because a weekday meal, the Torah doesn't require that it has to be prepared from before day. So it's not halacha muktzah. But regarding Shabbos and Yom Tov, it had to have been prepared from the weekday from before. You had to have it prepared. But ein Yom Tov mechel Shabbos. So, but Yom Tov cannot prepare for Shabbos, and ein Shabbos mechil Yom Tov. Shabbos cannot prepare for Yom Tov because it wasn't a weekday that it was being prepared on for the next day of Shabbos or Yom Tov. So the reason why we still hold that the Beish and Olda Yom Tov is a problem is because we're talking about that it's Yom Tov is Sunday, And Rabbi holds that if the egg is laid on Sunday, that means to say it must have been finished, prepared on the day before. What was the day before? The day before was Shabbos. Shabbos cannot prepare for Yom Tov. That's considered as mukta. The egg has to be prepared, whatever the food has to be prepared, from before on a weekday. B'yom HaShishi is on the Friday, on a weekday. That you have to prepare. Here it was prepared, even B'dei Shemayim was prepared on Shabbos, then you can't. It's not considered prepared for your Shabbos or Yom Tov meal, and that's why the Beitzah Daf on Sunday is going to be forbidden. To which only Abai says to him, wait a second, if that's the case, then Yom Tov Ba'alma, then a regular Yom Tov, which is not Sunday, Tishtari, then it should be prepared the way you're saying, a Beitzah Daf. But we're not saying it. It sounds like that any Beitzah Daf on any day of Yom Tov is going to be forbidden. But why? It's not a Sunday. That says Rabbah is Gezerah, but it's rabbinic decree Mishum Yom Tov Achar Shabbos. We don't let you if it's Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday with the egg laid on that day of Yom Tov. Because if Yom Tov is on a Sunday, you might say, hey, I remember last year we had an egg laid on Yom Tov. That was great. We had hash browns and with eggs, and it was great. And you're not going to recall that was on a Sunday. that this year's now a Sunday, and you can't use the egg because it's mukta deraisa because it wasn't prepared from a weekday. But then he says, but Shabbos Tiyama. What's a regular Shabbos? That's not after Yom Tov. Tishtari, it should be permitted to swallow a raw egg that's born on Shabbos. Well, what's the problem with that? And he says, I'll tell you, Shabbos after Yom Tov. Yeah, but that's also the same thing. That's a concern of if Yom Tov is Friday and Shabbos comes after that. If we let you use the egg laid on Shabbos, you might come to use the egg that's laid on Shabbos after Yom Tov, and that wasn't prepared from a weekday. There was a Yom Tov that came before it. So that's why every Shabbos we don't let you also use an egg that was laid on it. Now, the Gemara says, are we really so stringent regarding an egg to make a gzeira of when it's really permitted because of when it's forbidden? What says the Gemara about Tanya, but we learn the Beitzah. The Beitzah says, if someone slaughters a chicken, and he finds inside the chicken, before it was laid, he finds complete eggs. So on that the Beitzah says, you're allowed to eat those eggs on Yom Tov. Says the Gemara, now if it's true the way Rabbi answered, Ligzer, we should make a gzeira, same concern. Because of the concern for those that are going to be born on that day. Meaning, you're telling me you're concerned when something is really mutter because of a case that's usher, because you're going to be confused. So how can we let you eat the eggs that are inside the chicken? Shouldn't we be concerned for the eggs that would be born a few hours later on? It's the same concern where you're not, I don't really do Monday, Tuesday, even though it should be permitted because of Sunday. So here also, I shouldn't let you have the eggs that are inside the chicken because of the eggs that might be laid from the chicken. Why is that any different? Why does the Beitzah say that you can eat the eggs that were found in the chicken that you shafted on Yom Tov? Which Rashi points out that, isn't this a gzeira l'gzeira? You're telling me that you shouldn't be able to eat the eggs in the chicken because of the eggs that are going to be laid from the chicken. The problem is, even the eggs laid on Yom Tov are only forbidden because of a gzeira because of Sunday. A regular Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Why can't you eat those eggs? Oh, really you should, because of Sunday. So now you tell me that you're asking why do you let the eggs in the chicken? Because of the eggs laid from the chicken? But that's a gzeira l'gzeira. So this says Rashi, no, we could say that the Bryce is talking about a case of where Yom Tov is on Sunday, which now you could be geyser those that are inside the chicken because those are laid from the chicken, because of there it actually would not be a gzeira l'gzeira, it would be one gzeira because the eggs laid on that Sunday is actually going to be Issa Deraisa according to Rabbah. But that's what's difficult on Rabbah. That's even Yom Tov Achar Shabbos should be permitted because you're saying you see that they are permitted because they're not born. Why? According to Rabbah, you make such a gzeira. Which Rashi points out that in general throughout Shas, how do we know we don't make a gzeira l'gzeira? It's from the pasuk b'shmarti mishmarti, which means Hashem says make a mishmeres, make a guard. Or make a gzeira for my mishmeres, meaning for the Torah. But don't make a mishmeres for the mishmeres. You don't make a gzeira for the gzeira. So, but here it wouldn't be a gzeira l'gzeira. It'd be one gzeira. So what's the pshat that the Beitzah says that it's going to be permitted if you make such a gzeira? So Amalei Rabbah says, a very simple answer. It says be'im gemuras b'mei iman. Whole eggs inside the stomach, the womb of its mother, of the chicken, is musli shchichi. It's not so common when you're shechting a chicken, you find eggs inside of it. That's in general a Talmudic dictum, that's something that's not common, the Rabbanan were not geyser, and therefore that's why you're right, we would make such a gzeira, but it's not a common thing, and therefore we didn't say it's asa. But in general, that was the second teretz the Gemara gave of Rabbah, of the Beis Shnol B'Yom. The reason why Beis Hill holds it forbidden is because it's called Hachana de Rabbah. You have to have that, whatever you're going to eat on Shabbos and Yom Tov, those sudas have to be designated and prepared from a weekday beforehand. But the egg that's born on Sunday was prepared on Shabbos. What's for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Oh, that's Xera. That if we don't want you to do it on those days, because then you might do it on Sunday, which is the Issa Deraisa of Muktzah. A third interpretation, Rabbi Yosef Amar, he said the reason is, actually we're talking about an egg of where the chicken is designated for eating. As we explained. So then why does Beis Hill hold its Aser? Gzeir Rishon Peres HaNoshim. It's a rabbinic decree because of the fruits that fall off a tree on Shabbos. Which right now the Gemara assumes what that means to say is, it's a Gzeira because of Peres HaNoshim. That we don't want you to eat it because Peres HaNoshim, when we have fruits that fall off a tree, an egg laid on Yom Tov is similar to a fruit falling off a tree. It's also like what's called Pri HaNoshim. It's the product that is being detached from where it's connected. So therefore, just like we know that fruits fall off a tree are forbidden, so too eggs coming out of a chicken is very similar, and that's why you can't eat that egg on Yom Tov. But now my Abaye says, wait a second. What's the reason why you're not allowed to eat fruits that fall off a tree on Shabbos? Let's continue to top of Gimel and Aleph is Gzeira. It's a rabbinic decree. Shemeyala v'yitloish. Shtei says a whole discussion why it has to be for that. Why can't it just be for Muktzah? But it's a decree because you might go up and you might tear off from the tree, which there would be Issa Deraisa of Kaitzer, which is Ab Malacha. But the problem is he guf Gzeira. The whole halacha of Peres HaNoshim is a rabbinic decree. Now, we're going to go ahead and make a rabbinic decree for a rabbinic decree. You tell me you can't have the Beis Shnol because it's similar to Peres HaNoshim? So the Gemara, no, it's all one rabbinic decree. In other words, it's not that this is a Gezeira that you shouldn't come to Peres HaNoshim. Rather, when the Rabbanan gathered together and they made a Gezeira on the Peres HaNoshim, included was an egg. Now, although an egg doesn't have a problem about talisha, about detaching, but it was included in the Gezeiras Chachamim because they made the Gezeira on Peres HaNoshim, on a fruit that gets detached. Now, the real reason was for that of trees, but included a Pri HaNoshim in any product that becomes detached is a Peres HaNoshim. So therefore, it's not a Gezeira for the case of Peres HaNoshim. It is a Peres HaNoshim, although the reasoning doesn't apply by egg, but it's still included in the rabbinic decree, and therefore it was included in that Isser of the Gezeira of Peres HaNoshim. Again, because when the Rabbanan make a Gezeira, they make on the whole category. As anyone knows, even practical halacha, we say, okay, that was the Gezeira, and this is included there, even though the reasoning doesn't apply over here. So this was a Pri HaNoshim, and therefore that's why we said it's going to be forbidden. Let's do the fourth answer the Gemara gives. Rabbi Yitzchak Amar, he says the Isser of Beis Shnol on Yom Tov is a Gezeira, is a rabbinic decree, mishum mashkin shazavu, because of the juices that flow out. Which, if you have juices that come out of a fruit, it's forbidden on that day. As the Mishnah teaches Masechet Shabbos Daf Yomi Beis, if they come out on their own, they're going to be forbidden. Now, an egg is similar to that, where it's also flowing out and coming out from where it was absorbed. So, just like you're not allowed to drink the juices that flowed out of a fruit on Shabbos, so too, you cannot have a Beis Shnol b'Yom Tov. It's the same idea that it's flowing out from where it was absorbed. So only Abaye said, wait a second. Mashkin shazav b'taimamai. What's the reason why you cannot drink the liquids that flowed out of a fruit on Shabbos? It's a decree because you might come to squeeze it. Because you got the juices, you enjoyed that grape juice, you enjoyed that orange juice, whatever, you're going to squeeze it out. And squeezing out Paris, squeezing out fruits is a telad, it's a derivative of the malach of dash, of threshing, where you're detaching it from its peel, as you're just like when you're doing threshing, which you're taking out the grain from its husk. So that's the reason why you cannot drink the liquids that flowed out because of a concern that you might come to do mefarik, you might do schit, you might do dash. Promise, when it itself is a rabbinic decree, we're not going to make that you can't have Beis Shnol because of Mashkin Shazavu. Says the Gemara, same thing as we said before. No, Kula Chad Gezeira. It's all one Gezeira, as we explained. Meaning, when they made the Gezeira on Mashkin Shazavu, included in that category was an egg. because it's also something, again, the Rabbanan, they give a categorical and anything, if you understand malachas, it's all conceptualizations of productive and constructive activities, and in the mashkin shezavu, in the liquids that flow, are also the egg that it was absorbed in something and now it came out. So although maybe the reasoning might not apply, you're not going to squeeze out the chicken to get the egg, but it's included mashkin shezavu. So therefore, that was the 4 pshatim we had in the Gemara regarding this opening halacha of this Masechta Beitzah Daf. What's the reason why it'd be forbidden? Either because it'd be a problem about muktzah / noilid. Shemar had a difficulty with that because then say the machlekes regarding the chicken, not just the egg. Because we were talking about the chicken that was designated for raising eggs and not for eating, so therefore it was muktzah, and so too is the egg. Or we said from Rabbah, what's known as Achana de Rabbah, that the reason is because of a gzeira of when Yom Tov was going to be on the Sunday, it's going to be on the Sunday, then it was prepared on Shabbos, it has been prepared from a weekday to Yom Tov, and therefore that's why, even though it's a Tamigos HaMetzes L'Achila, you're not going to have to eat the egg, and yet that's a din in the egg, not in the chicken, because the chicken actually is not muktzah, but the egg was not prepared from a weekday, it was prepared from Shabbos. Or the last 2 interpretations, which are similar, Rabbi Yisrael says because it's a gzeira because of Peres HaNoshon, meaning it's included in the gzeira of Peres HaNoshon, which is when something falls off a tree, we said you're not allowed to go ahead and eat it because you might come to detach it. This was included, it's a Pri HaNosher that comes out from something that's connected. Or, like Rabbi Yitzchak said, it's a gzeira b'shem mashkin shezavu, which is a different concern because you might come to squeeze out the fruit if we let you have the juice. Although this, you're not going to have to concern of it, but it's included in something that was absorbed, that now got detached, that you might come to that it's something that was from absorbed, which the Gemara is going to explain why don't either one say like the other one, because they're very similar. But again, they're included in those categories, and that's why Beitzah Daf would be also according to this.